UFC Fight Night, Grant Dawson versus Bobby Green. Welcome to another UFC prediction and analysis video. Harris flying solo today for boxing MMA picks, but the show must go on. I am going to give you fight by fight predictions and analysis from that betting perspective, specifically trying to let you know which fights are worth the value, which fights to avoid, which underdog has the best shot at winning, and some parlay action toward the end of the video as well. Make sure you subscribe to the channel here at Boxing MMA Picks. Please hit the thumbs up on this video as well. And most importantly, we are going to want to hear from you in the comments when it's all said and done. For this UFC Fight Night event, we have 11 fights overall after one of them was scrapped pretty recently. We have 6 fights on the prelims, 5 fights on the main card. So let me get started right away with fight number 1 of our prelims, taking a look at Montana De La Rosa versus JJ Aldrich. Women's flyweight fight here. Montana De La Rosa is on a 2-fight losing streak. She lost to Tatiana Suarez back in February. Her stand-up is improved, serviceable at this point, I would say at best. Still flat-footed, still heavy on her feet. Her goal will be to try to land those takedowns. She's going to try to work the clinch. She's going to try multiple takedown attempts. From an accolade perspective, 3 times All-American wrestler in high school. And she lands almost 2 takedowns per fight. Definitely capable with her grappling, pretty protective with her guard. She is good at fighting off takedowns, though her takedown defense stands at just 64%, so a little bit vulnerable there. But nonetheless, her strength is on the ground, and that's where she's going to want this fight. JJ Aldrich beat Na Liang back in August via ground and pound, decent pace. She likes to come forward, not afraid to engage, eat a shot to give a shot type of style. She's going to throw multiple punches at a time. A lot of toughness, has a decent left straight down the middle, one of the best in the division for sure. Primarily a boxer with her striking. She will use some clinch work against the cage. She has that ability. She also has the ability to land takedowns with good ground and pound, although the takedown numbers wouldn't really support that at just 0.8 takedowns per. So not really an active part of her game. Now, JJ Aldrich is stepping in here on short notice. She competed about 5 or 6 weeks ago. So I think for the most part, she should be ready in this situation. Odds here are really close. Montana De La Rosa is a slight favorite. But honestly, I'm a little surprised. I have to say, I think this is one of those fights that are at least 70-30 in favor of JJ Aldrich, if not 75-25. And I like Aldrich because when I'm looking at the stats from the last fight, yes, she was taken down 3 times, but she ended up winning via ground and pound. Again, showing that ability on the ground. Outside of the stats itself, just like her last fight, I picture her to be the much better striker here. I think she's physically strong. So even if she can't stop the takedown, I think it's going to be hard to keep her down. And I think she is good enough on the ground in this matchup to stay away from submissions, to possibly land takedowns of her own, again, against Montana De La Rosa's 64% takedown defense. And, I see Montana De La Rosa's takedown approach being less and less effective as this fight goes on. I see JJ Aldrich's striking setting her apart on the scorecard for this fight. So I like JJ Aldrich. Again, I feel at least 70-30 about it. Do with that information what you may, especially with JJ Aldrich being an underdog here. But again, JJ Aldrich will be my pick. Fight number 2, Aoriqileng versus Johnny Munoz. Johnny Munoz, unanimous decision loss to Daniel Santos in June. It's a BJJ black belt. He'll use the takedown and clinch approach. Good entries, good timing, good positional improvements, decent ground and pound as well. In terms of his stand-up, he's patient. He can switch stance. He uses that jab hand regularly. The striking is pretty diverse with good movement. He looks comfortable on the feet for the most part. Now, what hurts him striking-wise is that he's not a dangerous striker by any means. He was outstruck 18-50 in his last fight. He's also comfortable off of his back with, dangerous submission attempts, but being comfortable off of your back, sometimes it hurts you, right? Sometimes it hurts you on the scorecards, especially if your opponent can defend it. Going up against Aoriqileng, he lost to Ayman Zahabi back in June. He is a patient striker as well. He uses a lot of switch stance in his style, patient controlled pressure with a solid calf kick as well. With his patience, he picks his shots well. He's a sneaky counter puncher, and he has good pop in his hands. Decent takedown numbers offensively, 1.5 takedowns per. His takedown defense, however, is not great at just 55%. Though I do believe he is above average on the ground, all things considered. He also has good cardio, can definitely go full 15 minutes, no problem. Now, Johnny Munoz should have the advantage in this fight in that he can land takedowns on Aoriqileng. Again, Qileng just 55% takedown defense. Munoz almost 2 takedowns per fight. That tells you that that is near inevitable. That said, Aoriqileng will be the fighter coming forward. Aoriqileng also has the better striking, if you ask me. So you are looking at a clash of styles in some ways, but prediction-wise, I'm going to say 2 things. Firstly, neither fighter is a fighter you can trust. So regardless of which side you're on, you can't trust any of them. You can't be too confident in any of them. Secondly, I trust Johnny Munoz a lot less in this fight. I don't like his style if I'm betting on him. He fights off of that back foot a lot. He lets himself be taken down. He even tries to pull guard at times. If he lands that submission, great. But if he doesn't, then it's an uphill battle for him from a scorecard perspective, just based on his style alone. So I'm thinking that Aoriqileng gets it done here. Again, he's better on the feet, more pressure on the feet, the ability to land takedowns in his own right. Not a confident pick whatsoever, though. But Aoriqileng will be my pick. Third fight, let's look at Vanessa Demopoulos versus Kanako Murata. Kanako Murata, it's been 2 years since her last fight. She lost to Verna Jandiroba June 2021. That was a doctor stoppage due to a shoulder injury, so didn't exactly lose, but she was losing. She has fundamental boxing technique. Look for decent movement, a lot of fakes and feints. She's going to look to pick her shots with a lot of level changes. She has legit wrestling. Speaking of the level changes, you can definitely see it with her physique. 13-time national champion, 13-time world champion wrestler. She has good takedowns. She has good chain wrestling. And I've seen her make really good positional improvements as well. Things like passing guard, wrist control, different fundamentals to keep her opponents down. So that definitely is a legitimate part of her game. Vanessa Demopoulos, unanimous decision loss to Karolina Kowalkiewicz. That was back in May. She's introduced as a jiu-jitsu and Muay Thai style fighter, usually a high-paced striker. She usually likes to come forward and engage, decent low kicks as well. She has been in 5-round fights, so I'm not worried about her cardio whatsoever. Doesn't really have the best striking defense, though. I think she's more on the brawl side of things as opposed to the technical side of things with her striking. And her strength is definitely in her BJJ. She is a high-level grappler. I wouldn't consider her to be the strongest wrestler, which could be a problem for her. I think she has issues landing that takedown usually in her fights. Now, let me not spend too much time analytically here because I can see why Kanako Murata is the big favorite here. She should be the higher level fighter virtually everywhere in this fight. I don't think the long layoff for Kanako Murata over 2 years, I don't think that's going to negatively impact her. If anything, it's given her ample time to heal, given the fact that she's only 30 years old. So it's not like she's moving past her prime. If anything, she's moving into her prime. So I don't mind the layoff at all from that perspective. Murata striking a lot cleaner, especially as the fight goes on. Murata should be the better wrestler, should be able to land more takedowns against Vanessa Demopoulos' 50% takedown defense. Although Demopoulos is a good grappler, she's no Verna Jandiroba. And Murata already had to deal with that, right? So I think Murata has learned what she needs to learn to avoid a shoulder injury or even to avoid those submission attempts like her last fight, like what occurred in her last fight. So I think she's going to get it done fairly easily here, but let's see what happens. Fight number 4, Nate Maness versus Mateus Mendonça. Maness lost to Tagir Ulanbekov back in November. Boxer wrestler type of fighter. In the stand-up, he's going to use his length and his reach. For this one, just a half inch in reach, but 4 inches in height. Straight punches, long jab, good lead hook. Fights from distance pretty well. Closes that distance pretty well as well. He is a good counterpuncher. He's going to use a good variety of strikes, really good takedown defense, solid takedowns offensively as well. And he is pretty effective on top. Good activity, some ground and pound. He can land the submission as well. And let me not say real good takedown defense. I was referring to just his offensive takedown game. From a takedown defense perspective, 75%, which is decent, but he can be taken down. We have seen good wrestlers use that ground game, in fact, as a way of beating him. So let's see what happens here, because Mendonça is capable of landing takedowns, though I wouldn't say he's a great wrestler per se. He did have a unanimous decision loss to Javid Basharat back in July. He's good on the feet, decent movement, pretty diverse with his striking. He likes to come forward. From what I've seen, he can be really explosive, especially in those counter punching situations, and the power is there to land a fight-changing punch. I've seen him use that clinch approach after putting pressure on you and getting you against the cage. He gave up 3 takedowns in his last fight. That's something that you want to watch out for. I've seen a decently protective guard. I've seen him scramble. He has had a few wins via submission. So that tells me that he's at least comfortable down there. Now, Maness does have some value here as an underdog. We see he's a pretty sizable underdog. I think he can use a very similar approach that Javid Basharat used against Mendonça. Maness, as the taller fighter, he can stay moving. He can stay striking from the outside. He can defend the takedowns for the most part at 75%. He can work his way back up if he is taken down, and even land takedowns of his own. I don't know if Maness will be capable of, replicating something like that, but a few things. Firstly, I will say that Mendonça just hasn't done anything in the UFC to warrant these types of odds as a pretty big favorite here. Secondly, we've seen Maness take on quality competition in the UFC already with some wins at this level, right? So I say all of that to say I think I'm going to ride with the underdog just based on the value. Not necessarily that I think Maness is the better fighter, but Maness needs a win. He's taken on 2 tougher prospects in the UFC, Umar Nurmagomedov, Tagir Ulanbekov. That's a death row of prospects there. And I think this can comparatively be a winnable spot for him against a fighter in Mendonça who is dangerous, but who isn't exactly polished yet. For someone with Mendonça's style, it's going to be that first round that's most dangerous. Mendonça definitely tires out after that first round. And a lower weight class for him, he's dropping down in weight in this one. Not that I think he's going to have an issue with it, but coming down in weight, it may even mean less cardio for him. So if Maness survives that first round, which he may not, then I think he can outpoint his way to victory in rounds 2 and 3. With, again, just that fighting from the outside approach, fighting off the takedowns approach, and trying to be the more effective striker from the outside. So again, if anything, this is a value play more than actually believing in the fighter. But I do think there is some value here on Nate Maness. So I'm going to take a shot. Nate Maness is going to be my pick. Fight number 5 of our prelims, Karolina Kowalkiewicz versus Diana Belbiţă. Kowalkiewicz is on a 3-fight winning streak. She beat Vanessa Demopoulos back in May. Mentioned that earlier. Technically sound in her stand-up. Her striking looks rejuvenated in a lot of ways. Still has that Muay Thai style. Still very much a point fighter. Still likes a technical fight. She has solid movement. She has solid combinations. But she's starting to show good forward pressure in her last couple of fights. Very comfortable in the clinch. Though takedowns aren't a part of her game, she is very much a striker. And the cardio is pretty consistent too, which is great to see. Again, though, just with this rejuvenation that she's on, her movement, her pressure, her striking, her confidence, her game plan, these are all things that have looked rejuvenated now during her now 3-fight winning streak. She's showing that she's still hungry to compete despite being 37 years old. Diana Belbiţă, on the other hand, unanimous decision win over Maria Oliveira back in June. She's introduced as a striker, heavy-handed striker at that. She puts her combinations together pretty well in that Muay Thai stance that she has as well. She likes to come forward. She is a pressure fighter, bit of a brawler, pushes a high pace, especially early in the fight. Some things I don't like about her game, though. Sometimes she doesn't really have the best takedown defense. Her cardio is questionable as well. And she really only has that one gear, one style, one game plan. These are things that I've seen her make improvements on, to be fair. But these are all things that are red flags, ultimately. Now, UFC matchmaking has put Karolina in some very winnable spots as of late. And I think that this can be another one of those spots for her as well. Yes, Belbiţă will be dangerous throughout the fight, but Karolina has looked rejuvenated, as I've alluded to multiple times. And with that, she looks tougher. She looks more willing to engage. She looks more durable, which is going to matter against a Diana Belbiţă as this fight goes on. This will definitely be a striking match. Both fighters are definitely capable Muay Thai strikers, but I'm leaning on Karolina here to be the more technically sound striker, the more experienced striker. So I expect Karolina to land more throughout the fight. I expect Belbiţă to slow down, as I mentioned, as this fight progresses, while Karolina should be able to be consistently effective throughout. Belbiţă definitely has good value as an underdog because I do believe that this fight will be competitive, but my pick is going to be Karolina again as the more experienced and the more technical fighter here and the more durable fighter as this fight goes on. So Karolina Kowalkiewicz will be my pick. Next up, we are looking at final fight of our prelims, Philipe Lins versus Ion Cutelaba. Philipe Lins unanimous decision win over Maxim Grishin. That was back in June. He's introduced as a striker, solid stand-up, good long jab. He can put good punching combinations together. He's going to look for those fakes and feints. Very explosive as well. Look for him to control the center of the octagon. Look for him to try to be that fighter coming in, closing distance, using that pace, using that explosiveness to his advantage. Big power as well. We know that he was a former heavyweight, so definitely brought that power down to light heavyweight. 1.5 takedowns per fight. He did land one in his last fight, so it is something that can be a part of his game, despite being more of a striker than anything else. Ion Cutelaba, on the other hand, beat Tanner Boser back in April. He's a finish or be finished type of fighter. He's going to come forward. He's going to walk you down. He's going to throw a lot into his punches. Very explosive. Also has legitimate power. We also have to respect the fact that he's starting to bring more IQ to his game rather than just swinging wildly. Definitely a lot more patient on the feet. Definitely a lot better at setting things up. And he will definitely incorporate that ground game when he chooses to do so. He's been landing a lot of takedowns recently. 4.75 takedowns per fight at 58% accuracy will speak to that. He's got a good ground and pound as well. Really, when I look at this fight, it's anyone's fight, right? It's a coin flip type of fight. Both fighters very explosive. Both are a little wild. Both have been knocked out several times in the past. So that's going to tell you that this one really could just be about who catches who first. I think Cutelaba probably is the more skilled fighter here, or maybe more capable fighter here. A bit more controlled in the striking, in my opinion. Slightly better with the counterpunching, much better with the wrestling, despite Philipe Lins having 100% takedown defense on paper. Going to be a firefight for sure. Again, either guy can hurt the other quickly. This fight can end early on either side. But I think Cutelaba has more tools to offer when it's all said and done. So Cutelaba is going to be my pick. Let's move on to the main card where we have 5 fights overall. Fight number 1 of the main card is Alexander Hernandez versus Bill Algeo. Algeo beat TJ Brown back in April, I should say. He fights tall, long kicks, leg heavy attack stylistically with his striking. He's light on the feet, very relaxed. Is going to switch stance often. and the combinations are pretty fluid. Keeps his hands down defensively. That's sort of part of his style. That will cost him at times, but of course that does add to his agility. Also got to note, just 55% takedown defense. He has been taken down in every single one of his UFC fights thus far. Cardio could be a concern as well with him. Definitely slows down as the fight goes on. But in general, he does go at a good pace. He can be dynamic. He also has good grappling. You can't sleep on that. 7 of his 17 wins are via submission, including that last fight. So you're not looking at a one-dimensional fighter, despite some holes in his game. He's going up against Alexander Hernandez, a good overall fighter, unanimous decision win over Jim Miller back in February. He's pretty well-rounded, like I mentioned, crisp boxing, good kickboxing, good power, good explosiveness. I like his calf kick. I like his movement. I like his striking IQ. The diversity is there as well. I like the way he uses his jab. It's pretty effective. The wrestling is there. He's going to go for takedowns depending on the matchup. Nearly 1.5 takedowns per fight. Plus, he is a BJJ black belt. So again, you're looking at a well-rounded fighter. However, his cardio has been an issue in the past. His pacing did look a lot better in his last fight, but again, something worth noting. Now, Hernandez taking another crack at featherweight, 145 pounds, after spending a couple of fights at 155. I think this is going to be a very competitive fight. Both guys are multi-dimensional in their style. I think Algeo will have the better movement on the feet, but I don't know if that's going to lead to more effective striking, right? I mean, Hernandez's style of sort of pushing forward with good activity, I think it can actually work well for him in this spot. I like Hernandez in this underdog spot also because he's more likely to be better at landing takedowns. He's had multiple fights now where he lands multiple takedowns. Can't say the same for Algeo, right? Also, BJJ black belt. That should keep him protected against Algeo's submission attempts. I think Algeo is the favorite here because his striking is expected to be more dynamic, but I don't think that dynamic style is going to work against a style that's more intentionally straightforward, with a good level of technique in Alex Hernandez. If nothing else, I look at this as a 50-50 fight, and that's going to lead to me leaning on the side of the underdog, Alex Hernandez. Fight number 2 of our main card, Drew Dober versus Aoriqileng. Dober lost to Matt Frivola back in May. Decent on the feet, good constant pressure, good combinations. We know the power is there with Drew Dober, and we definitely know he's not afraid to engage. He's, as tough as it gets, right? His last 6 wins are via KO, TKO. Going to keep it on the feet. Only 0.69 takedowns per fight, only 17% accuracy, just 56% takedown defense as well. So watch out for that. Otherwise, it's going to be one of those fighters that are, just simply solid competition for anyone that they go up against and can't be taken lightly. Aoriqileng lost to Christos Giagos back in April. He's going to fight at distance. He likes that low leg attack. He's patient. He's poised, pretty consistent with his pace, pretty consistent in his attack. He's going to keep that jab hand out for range control. He's going to try to patiently work his way in and pick his shots and try to get his opponents to bite. Sort of just one-dimensional, though, right? His takedowns, not really a part of his game. Just 68% takedown defense on top of that. Now, Drew Dober, the huge favorite here. And right away, I'm going to say that I don't think Dober is ever worth minus 430. I don't care who he's going up against. I mean, you look at his record, 26-12, pretty straightforward in his style, doesn't have good takedown defense on top of that. I mean, too many holes in his game to kind of warrant these odds, like I said, against anyone, because he's gonna be up in a fight against anyone that he goes up against. Now, fortunately for Drew Dober, he should get it done pretty easily here in a similar style as Aoriqileng's last opponent, or last fight, I should say, versus Christos Giagos. Now, Glenn doesn't land takedowns. Like I said, Glenn also isn't aggressive enough with the striking. So I can see Dober putting that pressure on and landing that knockout punch. And even if he doesn't finish Glenn, I can see Dober scoring more points throughout the match, dictating the pace, being the aggressor, and things along those lines. So Drew Dober will be my pick, but I absolutely would not bet on this one because Drew Dober's just not that kind of guy to warrant those types of odds. Third fight of our main card, Alex Morono versus Joaquin Buckley. Morono beat Tim Means back in May. Solid boxing, good overhand right, solid jabs, solid combinations, and he's got good power. Solid clinch game against the cage. He also does have some takedown ability, despite the numbers. Also had good grappling ability. Just not an active part of his game. He is very much a striker, but we can't discount that grappling. 7 of his 23 wins are via submission, including his last fight. Also, I don't really love his takedown or his striking defense, I should say. He leaves himself open at times, lacks technique sometimes, decent counterpuncher, though. Looks like he has improved cardio, so that is worth mentioning. But again, that is something that has been an issue in the past for Alex Morono. Going up against Joaquin Buckley, who beat Andre Fiallo back in May. He's an explosive striker, solid boxing, strong, shorter, stockier frame, but he has decent speed. He's light on his feet with good movement. He has good constant level changes, good fakes, good head movement as he looks to make his way inside. He's very much a striker, but he lands at 1.5 takedowns per fight. He landed 2 takedowns in his last fight, for example, so he can use that layer of his game, although I would not consider him to be a strong wrestler by any means. Good thing for Joaquin Buckley, the cardio is there. The will to win is there as well. Definitely not afraid to engage to try to get the better of his opponents. Interesting fight for sure. Close fight for sure. This one should be competitive both ways. I think Buckley could be the better takedown artist, but Morono is probably the better grappler. That said, I expect this one to stay on the feet, where both guys are pretty solid. In some ways, they're evenly matched, or we can at least say that one fighter isn't definitively better than the other when it comes to striking. I think what Buckley has working well for him in this fight is the speed advantage, is the better movement as well, sort of like we saw in his fight versus Andre Fiallo. Buckley is going to be able to use that movement to sort of implement a stick and move type of style against what should be a more straightforward striker in Alex Morono. From there, it's really up to whether Buckley can maintain that type of style for 2 rounds, and I believe that he will be able to. So Buckley's going to be my pick here. I am acknowledging that Morono definitely has some value as an underdog, so you want to be careful with this one. But I think Buckley has the higher ceiling, has the better speed, better movement, and should be able to get it done in this spot. Let's look at our co-main event. Let's talk Joe Pyfer versus Abdul Razak Alhassan. Pyfer beat Gerald Mearshart back in April, turned around, beat him again in a grappling match a month later. Fun fact. Looks comfortable on the feet, fights from distance. The striking is decent. Nothing special per se, but good power, good explosiveness. 8 of his 11 wins are via KO, TKO. His last 7 wins are via KO, TKO. In fact, expect him to be the fighter coming forward, though he's not going to force it. Also has good wrestling, good top control, good IQ on the ground as well, just overall. Abdul Razak Alhassan beat Claudio Ribeiro back in January, somewhat one-dimensional as that guy who's going to look out for that knockout type of punch. All of his wins are via KO, TKO, in fact. The ring control is there. The effective pressure is there. He does control center. He stays patient for the most part. Super explosive as well. That's not surprising. Swings big, misses big. In terms of a ground game, he's physically strong. He can work the clinch game with the raw strength that he has. He does land 1 takedown per fight. Wouldn't really consider him to be a good wrestler, though, technique-wise or IQ-wise. The takedown defense is pretty bad as well. Plus, his cardio is still nowhere near to being good. I will say this, Joe Pyfer is not guaranteed here. I think this is a winnable spot if you're Alhassan, just based on having that puncher's chance alone. Now, a good portion of this fight may occur on the feet, and like we saw in his last fight, Alhassan more than capable of landing that fight-changing punch. However, I think what will ultimately work against Alhassan here are a few things. His lack of cardio, for one, his lack of wrestling, for two, his lack of takedown defense, for three. I think Pyfer is going to have much more tools to get it done in this one. I think Pyfer is going to be more reliable and durable as far as cardio. Alhassan definitely live in round one, but if he doesn't land that Hail Mary, I think Pyfer should get it done pretty easily, sort of after that midway point of round one. So Joe Pyfer is going to be my pick. I feel pretty comfortable about it, all things considered. Let's look at our main event now. We are talking Grant Dawson versus Bobby Green. Grant Dawson, unanimous decision win over Damir Ismagulov back in July. Decent overall stand-up, decent calf kick. Likes to stay in the pocket and exchange. His technique is improving. A lot more tactical now. Active jab, good pace, good activity, good movement, good in and out movement. His strength is in his wrestling. Used to train with James Krause. He trains at ATT now, American Top Team. So you know the ground game is legitimate. Good entries, good single leg, good grip as well. Almost 4 takedowns per fight. Landed 3 in his last fight specifically. So you want to think about that as well. Also has really good smothering top control that he will capitalize on when he gets the opportunity to. Just 40% takedown defense. He does have the ability to work his way back up if he's taken down. And his opponent, in this one, isn't too active with the wrestling, so he's going to have that to his advantage. Bobby Green, on the other hand, beat Tony Ferguson back in July. Pretty dynamic in the stand-up, keeps his hands down and relies on speed and reflexes in terms of that striking defense. Works effectively for him for the most part. Good hand speed, good jab. Likes that front kick as well. Likes to move around the ring, keep his opponents at distance. He's going to look for those counterpunch opportunities, kind of try to bait you in. And don't sleep on his wrestling. He has it, although he doesn't use it often. Just 1.2 takedowns per fight, just 37% on the accuracy side of things. And I think it's going to hurt Bobby Green that he doesn't really use his wrestling. Dawson can be taken down, but I don't anticipate Bobby Green taking advantage of that. Green will have the better striking for sure. But I think the key stat in this fight is Bobby Green's 74% takedown defense. Now, on one hand, that's a pretty decent number. On the other hand, he has been in fights where he's been down, he's been taken down several times. And Grant Dawson, I anticipate him being able to land takedowns in this one. I think he's that good of a wrestler. I think he's that effective with spamming takedowns. And I can anticipate a fight where, just like Dawson's last fight, going up against a better striker in Damir Ismagulov, he's going to use that ground game to score rounds in his favor. So Grant Dawson is the pick fairly comfortably here, all things considered. But Bobby Green is dangerous for anyone. So you definitely want to be careful. But again, Grant Dawson will be my pick. Let me take it to Vegas. Forgot to have the website open here, so I'm going to open it up here as we speak. Of course, I'm going to be talking about my underdog pick. I'm also going to be talking about sort of parlay action that I'm looking to put together as well. I will start by reading off the underdog picks as we load up here. So in terms of underdogs, Alex Morono is an underdog versus Joaquin Buckley. Alex Hernandez is an underdog. Aoriqileng versus Munoz is a pick'em. Chris Gutierrez is an underdog. Ricky Glenn, Abdul Razak Alhassan, Diana Belbiţă, JJ Aldrich, Nate Maness, Philipe Lins, Vanessa Demopoulos, and Bobby Green. For my underdog pick that has the best shot at winning, I'm absolutely going with JJ Aldrich in this spot. Positive odds plus 210. Really shocked at this one. I'm surprised she is the underdog. I thought she would have been the favorite. So that's definitely going to be my underdog pick. Now, in terms of parlays, I'm looking at, let's see here. I'm looking at Joe Pyfer. And I'll be honest, I think I'm that confident in JJ Aldrich. So looking at those two fights, you're going to get a plus 2.62. That means that $100 will give a total return of $262 for our bigger bettors. $250 will provide a total return of $656. And what I'll do is I'll provide maybe a bonus parlay if you want to stay away from that underdog in JJ Aldrich. Joe Pyfer still will be on that ticket. I'd be looking to add Kanako Murata to that ticket. And final spot, I know main events can be risky, but I'm looking at Grant Dawson. Those three fights, Joe Pyfer, Kanako Murata, Grant Dawson, that'll be a double up 2.03. $100 will return a total of 203 for our bigger bettors. $250 will return a total of 507. So let's sign off on that note. This has been UFC Fight Night, Grant Dawson versus Bobby Green, full card prediction video by Boxing MMA Picks. Please make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel. Please make sure you hit the thumbs up on this video. And most importantly, I want to hear from you in the comments. How do you feel about both of my parlays? How do you feel about my underdog pick? What is your underdog pick? What parlays are you looking at? What props are you looking at? Or anything that you want a deeper analysis on? Let that be known in the comments, and we're more than happy to have that conversation with you. Officially signing off, I go by the name of Harris. This is UFC Fight Night, Grant Dawson versus Bobby Green. Full card prediction video at Boxing MMA Picks. And in our usual fashion, let's get this money.